Have you ever heard this story? About a family's lateness and about a girl who is forever in her 20s. It is said that somewhere far away that no one knows, Obey was born with boundless creativity and promising talents. Unfortunately, no one realizes that, or they don't have the patience to pay attention, or sometimes they see it but think it's against common sense. In the eyes of the people here, Obey is just a kid who has no talent to take care of her family. Sometimes they want her to be obedient and understanding, other times they criticize her for being too shy and having no opinion. Obey was like a shadow, pretending to live from day to day in worry about the vague future. She has always questioned herself about why she is so useless and why she is so childish. The family for which people often praise her is nothing but spine-tingling indifference. The girl lives in a blur, like a leaf that only listens to the wind and flies, not caring where it is or what the future holds. Then she grew up, struggled to find a job, and then treated herself stingily because her salary was so meager. She struggled for a few years, and then, under pressure from society, her family married her to a man they thought was suitable. It's okay, it's just a matter of moving the despised place from her parents' house to her husband's house. After that, like every typical woman in this society, she clung to her husband, gave birth to 1 or 2 children, and then continued to sacrifice herself for her husband and children. Obey spent her whole life crying, moping, fearing the future, and waiting for someone to guide her. And then she died, withered like a tree that could never flower. The Obey of this moment, like all the times before, regrets that she has wasted so much on this damn life and that boring society. The girl opened her eyes. It was strange. Why were her hands so smooth? She sat up and looked in the mirror. The face she had to look at for 80 years was now so adorable and immature. Her eyes, which had seen ugly things, were now wide open, looking back at her with innocence, and her hair, which once made her feel self-conscious, was now so pleasing to the eye.
I'm alive again,
Obey said happily. Can heaven above hear her heart? That's why it let her return to her teenage years. Or is the life in her memory just a nightmare?
I will live differently. I can't be ruined by this place again,
the girl thought to herself. For the first time in their lives, the parents finally looked toward their daughter when she said she would leave the house.
You can't afford to survive out there.
But it was you who pushed me out of this house and left me alone in this world. Dad, have you ever heard me? Have you ever looked at me even once?
Dear, don't you love your parents? Mom worked so hard to raise you, and then you just leave like that?
Did I ask to be born? Is it because I don't try hard enough, or is it because you, Mom, never acknowledge me?
Even her younger brother questioned her in all sorts of ways, sometimes like this and sometimes like that. Obey stared at that child. Since childhood, her parents have always favored and loved that child, forcing her to admit that being born first was a disadvantage. She wondered why she had to endure it after all. She doesn't even have the right to teach him or to be respected by him.
I'm so tired. This family, why did I take it so seriously before?
Obey sighed. No matter what everyone said, she still quietly packed her luggage, which didn't have much, and then left without a word. In her previous life, on rare occasions, Obey also traveled, but her health was poor and the means of transportation were like torture tools, so she could only lock herself in a corner of the house. This time, without using those tortures, the girl walked as a way to enjoy the world. In the place where she has lived for 2 lifetimes, everyone possesses a special ability that society calls acceptable. Some people can train dragons like her cousin, some people can understand animals like her younger brother, and there are also more unique people, like people who practice medicine, fighting, or manufacturing. In her previous life, following the glamour of money, Obey chose to be a maker, and in the last year of the course, she regretted it. At that time, she had to pass her classes, try to please her friends so they could help her, and be afraid of becoming unemployed. Now that she thinks back, the girl at that time was so negative.
Or everyone at that time was in a hurry. If you don't have the patience to help me, you'll just say that I don't know how to try. It's true that life is full of people who only know how to push others into dead ends rather than accompany or guide them.
Obey heard that in the north there was a place where artists lived. It was a place that had always called her from her previous life to this one. An artist is a term people use to refer to people who possess abilities that, according to society, are considered difficult to accept. But doing it for fun in your free time is called elegant. There are also many artists who are successful and actually make money, but compared to the total number, successful people are really few.
In a place that values money and sells lives for money, the word art is very difficult to say.
Obey's point of view is quite strange. She believes that passion should not be tied to money. For example, when writing a story or drawing a picture, if it's purely for passion, it's easy because how you do it or how it turns out is up to you, and the work is completely pure from the artist's soul. On the contrary, if you do it for money, you will be influenced by trends and other people's views, and your work will be molded into something that even the author finds strange. For Obey, every work is beautiful, it's just the person who enjoys it, or, to put it another way, whether the era at that time is suitable for that work to shine or not. She has seen hundreds of artists whose work went unnoticed while they were alive, but when they died, people praised it because only then did they see how good and wonderful this work was. In her previous life, Obey devoted both her youth and energy to society. She studied what people said was trendy, and she dressed, spoke, and acted like what people said was normal. Gradually, the fire inside her cooled, and she turned herself into ice like everyone else.
Living a life as a normal person. Now I want to go crazy for this life, I have nothing left to lose.
Obey went to that castle to ask to join it. At first, things didn't go very well. She was like a low note in a whole song full of high notes following the beat. Then slowly, she also had friends, people who had the same interests as her and never left her alone, even for a few short minutes. In her previous life, Obey also had friends, but as she grew older, the flow of life pulled them away from her, and then there was no one around enough for the girl to lower her mask and treat her honestly.
The first time I regretted it was when I stopped hanging out with her. It's also because I'm too childish and impatient. If I could turn back time, I would be more tolerant and patient with that friend. But, she also hurt me. I've been waiting for an apology for a long time. As long as she apologizes, I'll forgive everything. What is she waiting for? When I died, she still stubbornly believed that I was the only one who was wrong.
Life at the castle is truly as Obey imagined it when she was a child. Just like the mythical world in the book, this place is a miniature city where artists can be themselves and their talents are respected. Here, people also have to work, but Obey doesn't know that the way this place operates is similar to the society out there, but it is also very different from out there.
This place is not a fairy tale world at all. It is only a few hundred years away from the world out there in terms of modernity and busyness.
Obey's teacher said so. He said that in the past, people did not have modern equipment, so they sat together trying to understand each other as well as being understood by each other. Nowadays, it's very strange. Parents don't care about their children but just want them to understand. Siblings, instead of respecting each other, are treated unfairly, leading to hating each other. Friends talk about loving each other but ignoring your feelings. In the previous world, no matter what ability you were born with, everyone appreciated it and made you feel that being born was happiness. In that world, you will not be abandoned mentally or physically. Well, compared to now, you were not well off, but at least you were satisfied with it.
That time was so far away from now. So when they came to this castle, they said that this place was just restoring a fairy tale world.
He, like Obey, also dreamed of that glorious, happy time. So he took on the role of her guide in the process of cultivating her abilities. Rather, they help each other improve. One is rich in experience and the other is rich in creativity. But what exactly is Obey's talent for?
I can write spells.
Obey initially thought she could do only that much. In this day and age, not many people need pre-written spells because they're too expensive and not easy to use, and they also think that they don't need any talent to write a few basic spells themselves.
You can create your own world.
It turns out that her abilities don't just stop at writing spells, according to her teacher, who also possesses the same abilities as her. They can do much more than that with just their imagination. Because anyone can write a spell, they think it just stops at combining characters together, but the reality is far different from that narrow prejudice. Depending on creativity, the writer can create any illusion, from massive castles and vast deserts to distant snowy mountains. Obviously, that illusion can be directly felt, and as long as the writer wants it, that scene will disappear.
You can write about many other things besides scenery. You can create a paradise, you can create a battle, with the winning side belonging to whoever you want. Most especially because everyone has a different writing style, so the same spell will produce different results depending on their creativity.
As the teacher explained, when they both wrote the spell to create a garden, even though they wrote about the same thing, he created a garden filled with colorful flowers, and Obey created a forest. Indeed, this ability is like a drug that makes people just want to write to enjoy their work constantly. Unfortunately, they are just illusions and only last for a certain time.
Listen to me. Never sink too deeply into that pile of illusions. You have to distinguish between what is real and what is an illusion, you know?
Like all experienced instructors, he told his student not to be complacent about her own work because it would only end up wasting her life.